Hello, I'm Helen Foray. On today's program, is it miserable to live in South Florida? But first, a study released last week claims to show a strong connection between the increase in gambling and crime. We invited Dan Gelber to talk to us about that last week, but today we have a guest with a different perspective on the expansion of gambling in South Florida. Joining us for this segment, we have Jack Lowell, Senior Managing Director of Flagler Real Estate Services. And in the interest of full disclosure, Jack Lowell and I sit on the board of the Community Television Foundation of South Florida. Jack, thanks. Good
Helen,
to see you
thanks.
again.
Great to be here.
Why do you think the expansion of gambling is a good idea?
You have to separate the different types of gaming we have already here into the destination resorts concept that's being proposed in Tallahassee. What we have currently between the pari-mutuels and the Seminoles and Miccosukee operations and the internet cafes is what I'd call gaming that appeals to the local population. And it basically just takes money from our local economy and gives it to the operators of these facilities. Destination resort concept is to bring an entirely different type of operation to our community. In fact, the threshold investment proposed in Tallahassee is $2 billion for such a facility, and with a limited number of licenses for our community.
So some people have suggested, Tony Goldman in particular, who's a hotel mogul from Miami Beach, has said that there's going to be a sucking sound that we're going to hear, that if we have destination casinos, what it's going to do is really create job transfer as opposed to job creation.
You have to look at the concept that this would increase the market for everybody, because this kind of facility would allow us to compete with Orlando or Vegas, Las Vegas, because the kind of facility would be something completely new to South Florida. If you look at what has been done in other parts of the world with really good quality operators and the right criteria, it's produced a new market for everybody.
But if you talk about Orlando, for example, there's no expanded gambling in Orlando. Orlando's incredibly successful and it doesn't have an ocean. Why can't we have just something like that, you know, where you can say, let's just have, you know, these a resort that has, it's on the water, it's got 50 hotels, you've got everything except the gambling? Because if I understood it correctly, the gambling part of it, the component where the casino would actually be, is a relatively small piece of the project.
Yeah, I liken it in some respects to a cruise ship. I mean, what the cruise lines have done, and they have a mixture of experiences you have on a cruise ship, and one of those is gaming. And they put their theater at the bow of the ship, and they put the restaurant in the back, and you walk through the slot machines every time you go between the two. So here you'd have a mixture of experiences, and one of those experiences would be the casino.
One of the things that we have to look at when we talk about this, and I say we as a community and we as journalists look at this, and in a way it's like the question's been not well asked. It's not so much, are you in favor of gambling or not, because we already have gambling.
Yes.
The question is, are you in, what is in this law as it's been presented? We know, for example, it's been tabled so far and we don't know it.
Right.
It looks like for this year, it's not going to go anywhere in Tallahassee, but this was projected to be a legal or legislative battle for a couple of years at least, and ultimately we'll probably see it on the ballot. But as the law is today, the what do you call it? The law has been presented so far. It doesn't say how much money gets left locally.
No.
Miami continues to be the engine of enrichment for Tallahassee in particular. Yes. Can that be changed at all to make it more attractive for South Florida?
We would hope that if a bill does pass the legislature, that there'd be several provisions that would protect us and benefit us here. So there should be provision that a fair amount of the jobs, as an example, would go to local residents, some control mechanism for that. We should be absolutely sure that however the industry is regulated, it's done by a group that is politically independent. I'll give you one example. Right now, the pari-mutuels and the Seminoles pay a fund, into a fund, to take care of people people who have gambling addictions and other problems. Well, last year the legislature swept that fund to balance the budget. So whatever happens, we need to be sure there's local control of how the industry's money is spent to benefit our community.
And how can that be? What kind of provision, how do you see that provision being put in? What would it require?
It would require, first off, a good bill out of Tallahassee. That's a big hurdle. And then secondarily, if the industry's going to be regulated by a gaming commission, enough states have set up gaming commissions now. There are plenty of good models how to do it right if we can learn from that process.
You know, there are arguments that say that at the end of the day, gambling or gaming sells an illusion. But in the 21st century, if we really want to diversify our economy and strengthen our economy, we really need to be looking at other industries. You really don't have a city where you have tourism, which you say you think you could be buttressed with this type of destination casino, and biotech living side by side.
Yes, I think we are a very diversified economy, and certainly there are a number of parts of our economy that are showing great strength. Our trade partners to the south are all doing great, so our trade, all of our trade businesses are doing well. Residential real estate's coming back. Tourism is one of our strengths, along with biotech, biomedical. If we can appeal to a broader segment of the market in our tourism industry, which destination resorts would do, in my belief, then I think we create a bigger pie for everybody in our community.
But don't you think we're strengthening the hand too much of tourism? And you tourism folks, I have all respect for you, and I love what tourism does. But it does make us more dependent on the types of jobs that depend on tips for, to a great degree. Should we be looking at other components? And you've held really important positions in Beacon Council, Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce.
The Beacon Council Chamber of Commerce, which you mentioned, are just finishing up a new strategic plan called One Community, One Goal. And there are 7 targeted industries in that program, only one of which is hospitality related. So you're absolutely right. We need to have a diversified approach about attracting new businesses and growing businesses we have. One part of that is tourism. But if you look at the cruise industry as an example, which Ted Harrison almost individually started, it's only 20 years ago. We are now the world's cruise port, and it's created a tremendous number of jobs, and it's somewhat related to the hospitality industry, but it's not exactly land-based. And we're kind of talking about a similar thing with destination resorts. We do not have a destination resort anywhere in South Florida. The closest one is in Orlando. When
you look at the traffic congestion, the potential for traffic congestion, there are a number of issues that have to be addressed. Number one, 395, which is a state road, needs to be addressed. The infrastructure for the city needs to be addressed, but also the bottleneck it creates for Miami Beach. That has to be addressed as well.
The success of South Beach, and indeed the whole complex around the Performing Arts Center and the American Airlines arena, is one of the challenges we have to deal with. It's a nice challenge to have. Solving problems brought about by success are the kind of problems I'd always like to deal with. There recently was a concept plan rolled out by Armando Cadena with Cesar Pelle's team for how to deal with those issues in that immediate area where a couple of the firms have suggested they would put a casino resort. So I think you're absolutely right. We have to address those issues as they come up, and now's the time.
And this is a great opportunity to say thank you to all who are so involved in these issues. Regardless of where one stands on these issues, this is an important conversation that we need to have, because it focuses us, it forces us to look to who we want to be in this community and where we want the community to go.
Absolutely. And Tallahassee has to regulate the industry. Right now, the internet cafes are not regulated. They're not paying any taxes. Time to bring them under the umbrella.
Jack Lowell, thanks so much for joining us today on Issues.
Thanks, Helen.
Up next, how miserable is it living in South Florida? Stay with us.